Okay. You tell me if we're going live. Turn on auto-generated and live.
You're live, Mike.
Are we live? Okay.
Yeah, your camera is on too, so you guys switch to that other screen.
Which camera's on?
Remember you have it. Switch back to the coalition. Go to OBS real quick. You are live right now, so switch back to the coalition thing. Picture.
Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Just Thought You Should Know. I want to thank you for tuning in. This is the place where you're going to find out where do sporting families get their predation money, where does it come from, how's it generated, and then are there any projects that this money is earmarked for 2021? And more importantly, do we have any projects exclusively for coyotes? Stay tuned in and you'll be finding that out. Urban coyotes, does Vegas have any? We'll answer that question as well. Are we seeing more coyote escalations in and around suburban areas? We'll answer that one as well. Has the number of calls that NDOW's gotten about coyote sightings, encounters, and conflicts, has it increased? Well, we've got a guest here to help shed some light on that. We've got a guest, Mr. Tracy Truman. So Tracy, I want to thank you for joining us again, and had a lot of requests for you to come on back. You were last month's show, or last week's show, and we discussed a lot of items. So, one of the first things we put up here is, where does the funding come for predator projects itself?
Well, of course, in Nevada, through the legislature, every big game application that sportsmen and women make each spring carries with it a $3 predator management fee assessment, and so that fund is earmarked directly for predator management projects, and those funds must be used for predator management. There's some leeway for research, and we're going to talk about how some of that research money is spent, but basically that is where the funding comes from. There's also, in a limited fashion, though it's not funded, there are some agencies like the Wildlife Services and Department of Agriculture who receive funds from other sources who also, incidentally, have coyote control projects, not projects in the same sense that NDOW does, but they're doing activities that also impact coyote populations and densities.
Yes. And so for our viewers, Tracy just talked about the $3 predator fee, and everybody's probably sitting there saying, okay, well, how much does that generate? So statistic-wise, last year, this last hunting season that just closed down, we have we had over 349,000 applicants for big game. So that equates to, at $3 a person, this includes non-residents as well, you're well over $1 million, almost $1,050,000 or so went into that fund. Now that's great, but it won't get used for a year or so down the road because we're always a year behind in this stuff. So with that being said, these are projects that are slated for 2021. You can see it up on the screen right now. So this is a draft. So this is what's going on in our Department of Wildlife right now. They come up with these projects. They vent them out through the CABs, which is Citizen Advisory Boards to manage wildlife. And then it'll go all the way up to the state wildlife, and they will be the voting members on this to determine how much gets spent on each one of these. So those of you that are sitting there watching this right now, we commented earlier, is there any projects that are specifically designed for coyotes? If you look right up here at big game project 38, we got big game projections for coyotes. look on over right now, they are proposing $100,000 for that. So of that money that came out of that $3 predator fee, they want to spend $100,000. And now this is on lethal control. This isn't studies or anything else. This is 100% lethal control. So they're proposing to spend this year $100,000 on coyotes. As you look through this list, you'll see that there's other predators in here that they'll address. Mountain lions, ravens. Ravens are the biggest part of the biggest part of the money being spent goes towards ravens for a number of reasons. Even though these are big game hunters that put this money in our statute, it says that we can use that money also for sensitive species. And that's where this comes in. So, Tracy, Project 38 is exclusively for coyotes. We've been in the middle of a proposal to ban the coyote calling contest. So, with coyote contests potentially being banned, what is that going to do for the amount of money that sportsmen are spending? Is that going to increase it? Is that going to decrease it? How small or how big of an effect do you think that could possibly have on that?
Well, it's a bit of a complex issue, and you and I don't have all the data in front of us, but let's lay out what data we do have. We know that in Nevada, if you are hunting or trapping coyotes and you plan to sell the fur, you have to get a trapping license.
Yes.
And once you do that, then NDOW records the data. You have to submit a questionnaire at the end of the year about how many coyotes you took and that sort of thing. And so the 10-year average from NDOW for trappers and hunters who had trappers licenses for coyote take in Nevada, the 10-year average is about 3,500 a year. So we know 3,500 coyotes get harvested, and those are sold throughout the state. We know that Wildlife Services, because I've done some checking around, is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 coyotes per year. It's a generalization. Some
Right.
year up, some years down, depending on funding, weather, other problems, that sort of thing. So we know that those numbers exist. There is an unknown number of coyotes harvested by hunters, recreationalists, people hitting a coyote with their car, whatever it is that coyote mortalities. We know that there's a certain number that are lethal take that way that are not recorded. We just don't know what that number is. So to circle back to your question about whether this will impact, whether Project 40 will have, 38 will have much impact, these projects are designed to be specific to an area and to a species. And they're not carpet bombing, we're doing strategic bombing.
Right.
And so they have a very narrowly designed effect. And whether or not they have that effect, of course, is something that's subject to debate and further study and that sort of thing. In terms of a coyote calling contest, let me digress just a little bit. If that wasn't enough of a digression, let me digress just slightly, because for those who were here last week, they know that the resolution that was passed yesterday by the Clark County Commission basically asked that the Wildlife Commission adopt a regulation that bans all, quote, wildlife killing contests, which of course would involve predator calling contests like the world competition that's here and the various county and local clubs and organizations.
That's a big input for Elko. I know those guys look forward to that up there.
You bet. So we know that it impacts that, and that's the intent of it. So it would be statewide if the Wildlife Commission decided to take some sort of action on it. To the extent that the Wildlife Commission decides to do something with it, and let's all hope that they don't. Let's all hope that they follow what the legislature did 2 years ago and say, science and data suggest to us that that's something that has a value in terms of overall coyote numbers, and sometimes in specific areas, because as we talked about last week, coyote callers and hunters are going to go where there are coyotes.
Yeah. And
so to the extent that they're hunting coyotes, they're typically in areas where there are coyotes, and those areas might need some help. So will banning coyote calling contests affect this particular project? Only in a probably only in a macro sense, where because coyote callers go where there are coyotes, and the projects that NDOW designs are designed really to focus on benefiting related wildlife, typically prey species. So in the terms of Project 38, if I remember from reading it, they're really talking about that project is really designed to fund a pool of money so that when there are problems, the use of those funds has already been determined and approved. So in other words, if we have coyotes attack somebody and we need to send wildlife services to take care of that issue, we don't have to come back and say, oh wait, we have to
The
approve
mechanism
a
is
project.
already in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
it's sort of to be nimble enough and able to be used for as needed basis, among other things. But that's really the intent, is that we know that there are going to be a certain number of coyote problems out there, and we know that we need to fund those and approve them in advance to deal with them, and that's really
Right.
what Project 38 is.
Right.
But so a long way of saying it might banning coyote calling contests might have that effect to adversely affect these kind of projects. But I will say, just in closing on this question, I apologize for being so long-winded, but I will say on this question that I have to believe that NDOW takes into consideration, and this is where I got started on the numbers that we know, numbers of coyotes that
Right.
we know are harvested. NDOW has to take into consideration that these numbers of coyotes are already going to be removed from the landscape. They know from their own numbers that about 3,500 per year are going to be removed by trappers and recreational callers and whatnot. They know that another 3,000 to 5,000 per year are going to be taken care of by wildlife services and that avenue. And so, to the extent that they sort of assume those numbers are already going to be taken care of from private or other sources, then they can focus their money. I think there's 6 projects dealing with mountain lions,
Yeah.
one with sage grouse, another with the Overton Wildlife Management Area to protect the waterfowl. So I guess the point is that NDOW assumes that you and I and Wildlife Services are going to already assist with this project.
Yeah.
These
We're going to try.
we're going to try, and we will to some extent, and then that alleviates the requirement of having more projects designed for maybe a broader application of coyote number suppression throughout the entire state.
Right. So I got 2 points to add. You related back to the legislature, and that was coyote calling contest was taken up in the legislature last session. It was introduced by a Democrat, and by the way, wildlife shouldn't be a Republican or a Democratic issue. This should be a nonpartisan across the board. So I just want to make a note here that a Democrat introduced it, and you had a Democratic Assembly and Senate and a governor, and the bill got killed. So they
not governor, right?
last year Sisolak was.
So the 17th. This would be the.
This was this.
You're better at this than I am. So
Yeah,
I have to think.
the last. I know it's two
Okay.
years apart.
Okay.
So the last
So it was.
time we were in
so
session.
Governor Sisolak was okay.
Yes. So it did get vetted, and there wasn't enough votes to say let's go forward with this, because there is some benefit in having some of these coyotes.
Well, it wasn't, and I don't want to cut you off, but I think the point needs to be made that it wasn't just that there weren't the votes. There weren't the votes to get out of committee.
Well, that's where I was leading with it. Yeah, you're
ahead.
exactly right. So we call that it died in committee,
Yeah.
because there wasn't any desire to take it any further than this. Hence, now it's kind of jokingly, it's all the way back down to county commissioners who, quite frankly, have the largest concentration of urban coyotes in the entire state, and their solution is to ban coyote calling contests.
Right.
That boggles my mind personally, but that's just how I feel on that. And then the second part is, a lot of people keep saying, well, God, how many coyotes do we have? And I don't know that there's any actual statistics out there. As I researched this, there's a group called OnlineNevada.org. You guys can Google this and look at it and go online, Nevada, all one word, .org, and then type in coyote. They put an article out, and I'm going to read just a tiny bit from it that says, in Nevada, coyotes mainly breed between January and March. That's common knowledge to most of the guys that already know that. Their gestation period is 63 days long, and they generally produce 1 litter a year. 3 to 15 young are born in a den. That's a big spread right there. I mean, they're trying to cover all the bases.
That means that one time someone found a den that had 15 in it.
There you go.
I've taken a lot of dens, and believe me, none of them approach anywhere near 15.
Okay, so more coyote pups are born when coyote densities are lower and can travel distances up to 100 miles. The Nevada Department of Wildlife estimates there's about 250 to 750,000 individual coyotes in the state. Now,
That's helpful.
I know.
Give or take 500,000.
This
we know
is
how many there are.
This paper is 10 years old. It was done February 2nd, 2011. It was done by Evelyn LaRuca. I'm sure she did her research and stuff on it. But moving forward to today, in 2021, NDOW basically says that they have a very healthy population of coyotes without actually putting a number to that. But let's be conservative. Let's say that if this happened to be true and you had 250,000, Tracy, we got three times more coyotes than we have mule deer.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that disturbs me personally is when you look at a doe giving birth. In a perfect world, they give 2 fawns, and you look at the female coyote. According to this, between 3 and 15, I'll go with 8. You have 8 coyote pups to 2 fawns. So the fawns are the underdog, and Clark County Commission is wanting to defend the coyote.
And remember, a fawn is one meal.
Is 1 meal
For a den of pups.
Yeah.
It's one meal.
And so I think the worst part of it for me to digest is that they are asking to put a protection on an unprotected species.
Yeah.
And we don't even require a hunting license to hunt coyotes. I mean, they are a very, very healthy. So outside, from a science standpoint, I don't think that they have the justification to warrant a ban. Now, from an emotional side, you can argue that point all day long. But we are here to manage our wildlife by science. And that's pretty much on any literature and stuff like that. So I'm just putting that out there for some of the people that may not have known that. But we do have a very, very healthy population of coyotes.
Well, two things. One is back in the 60s and 70s, the government funded and did a ton of research on coyote densities and populations.
Okay.
And what they would do is they hire people who would go out and they would clear it. They called them tracking pits, and they would clear like a 6-foot square of real sandy soil. And in the middle of that square, they would put a bait. And they would drive by periodically and check and see how many coyotes came to
looking at the tracks and
then
stuff.
they had a matrix, and they would come up with data about it. We don't do that anymore.
That's called science.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. And then the second thing I'd say is, and this is larger. You heard all my philosophy about the county and whether it should be doing this or shouldn't be doing this. You heard all that last week, and so I'm not going to repeat that. But one important truth, I'll be Captain Obvious, is that regulation always follows culture. So if the culture is one of consumptive use of wildlife and people are close to the land, you and I grew up in an era where everybody went deer hunting. The banker went deer hunting.
The schools in Utah closed down for hunting season.
Yeah, everybody did. Everybody's close to the
Still
land.
do, too.
Yeah, everybody's close to the land. Everyone made use of the resource. Then culture started to change. We moved to cities. We didn't desire to do as much hunting and whatnot. At least some people didn't. And so the culture moved away from it.
Yeah.
And so now you come all the way down to, 7 people on the county commission?
Yeah, you got 7 people on the county commission.
None of them have any degree, as far as I know, have any degree or experience in wildlife management. And I'm no aspersions to them. They certainly are
Right.
experts in the area and have experience I have high respect for them in their business, their careers, their education, but this is not their area. And I really wish that they would stay in the area where they have expertise and knowledge and jurisdiction, and not stray into areas where they are way over their heads in terms of how wildlife populations regulate what they do and how they impact other species. And I don't think it's easy to pin a face on a fluffy critter like a coyote and say, let's protect all of them, let's not do them any harm. It's another one to talk to a crying child and say, I'm sorry that the coyotes packed away your cat Fluffy to feed to their den of pups. It's another, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. We let's move on to that. There's a paper that's been put out. I'm going to go up to this. It's called the levels of escalation for coyotes. I'm going to go up here. So these are the levels. So for those of you that are following along, level number 1, and you guys can grade where your community is at on this. Level number 1 is an increase of coyote sightings on streets at night, but immediately runs away. I mean, the coyote is fearful of the human. Level number 2 is you're witnessing a coyote, or maybe even multiple coyotes at night, but they stand their ground. They just sit there and watch you. They don't advance and they don't back away. Okay, that's level number 2. Level number 3 is an increase in coyotes approaching and possibly taking pets at night in the darkness. Okay, we already know that's happening. We're well into that. Number 4 is early morning or late afternoon. We got sightings of coyotes on streets or in parks. Now, we've even had them on school grounds here in Clark County since 2012. We've actually had 11 schools on lockdown because of predators, coyotes being on the property. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5 is at daylight, we got sightings of coyotes chasing or taking pets. Well, in Henderson, a couple of the news stations have done stories on people actually having their pets attacked by coyotes while they were on a leash. We're already up past 5 here in Las Vegas. You take somebody in White Pine County or Lincoln, they're probably like, if we see a coyote, he's long gone. He don't, but here it's a different story. So number 6 is coyotes attacking and taking pets that are in close proximity to their owners with pets on leashes or chasing joggers, bicycles, or single adults, not in the big groups. So we're there. Number 7 is coyotes observed during the middle of the day on streets, in parks, or in yards. I've got that in my backyard right now. And I know over on the side of town where you live and stuff, that's not out of the norm.
No, people tell me that every day.
Yeah.
When they find out I hunt or trap, they say, oh yeah, I saw a coyote yesterday at the park.
Yeah.
What time of day was that? It was about noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What was it doing? It was looking for food.
Yeah. That used to be headline news,
Yeah.
and now it's like, that's an everyday occurrence. Okay, number 8 is coyotes acting aggressively towards adults during the middle of the day. Now, this is where they've kind of come away from being a shy coyote to they're bordering on being bold. And, what's the next step? Well, number 9, an actual attack that came about because of rabies, as it once did in 1915 to 1935. We talked about that last week. But in today's day, in 2021, actually in 2020, we had people in Las Vegas actually get attacked by coyotes. Mm-hmm. California has had numerous attacks on humans. A lot of your literature says coyotes won't attack them. Well, once the habituation level, they've dropped their guard, and they start looking at you as a food source, in the beginning, they're afraid of you. All you got to do is honk your horn, and they turn around and run. That's not the case today.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason when you go to the zoo, there's a sign that says, don't feed the animals. And that's because, we joke about it, but that's because there are some areas where people feed coyotes, or they have learned to take food from people, and a coyote doesn't know where the food stops and your hand ends.
Yeah.
So there's that level of attack. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about a coyote mistaking your hand for a Big Mac. The level we're talking about is it knows you don't have anything in your hand, but it still sees the opportunity to make a meal out of something quite large that doesn't appear to be able to run away very fast.
So I'm asking myself, if I was in the shoes of a county commissioner, is the solution to this to ban coyote calling contests? The one commissioner did make a comment that even on the outskirts of Vegas, coyote calling tests go on. I kind of wonder what would be our current day situation if those didn't go on. We already have a ton of them in here. I mean, so much so that NDOW is getting calls. Last week we talked about it. I'll just jump straight to the highlights. 2018, they had 1,661 calls. Now, you can take that number with a grain of salt, but that doesn't mean we've got 1,600 coyotes. We could have 2,500. We could have 3,000 coyotes in the valley, because not everybody's going to call. They're just say, well, that's, and then you might also, on the other end of it, you might have 4 people call for the same coyote as that coyote's moving along. So I guess the point is, they're here.
Yeah, the other one I know from personal experience, because I had a client tell me this, is his neighborhood, little cul-de-sac, they saw a coyote. They called animal control. Animal control says, we don't do that.
That's true.
Call
That's right.
NDOW. So they called NDOW. NDOW says, well, we don't do that. And so I asked my client, well, what'd you do? He says, well, we just stopped calling. The same coyote appears every day. We just stopped calling. So your point is that the number is what it is, but it doesn't accurately reflect every instance in which a coyote has been sighted and citizens are concerned.
Yeah, so because of right here where I live, last year my wife called me and there was 6 coyotes in the backyard. And I'm going, I'm half joking with her, but is it just running back and forth and you're counting 6? She goes, no, there are 6 coyotes staring at me right now. Well, they started, once she got out and she got ready to take a picture, they took off. But when I came back home, I got a picture of 4. So when I got back home, look what my wife had done to our dog. We have a coyote vest. We coyote proofed our little dog. We have that one right there. It's 13 years old. That's a member of the family. I'm as much of a dog lover as all of them, but and I'm going to hold it up right here. So if somebody wants to see it live, let me go ahead and do this to me. Let me see. So this is the actual vest right here. She bought it on Amazon. And these little spikes that are on here are a little bit over an inch and a quarter long. And you've got some that go all the way around the neck. And then you got 2 that go right down the side of the rib cage. So when my dog sees this coming, it's like, no, you got to track him down to get this. All he wants to do is go out and go to the bathroom. Yeah. I feel for him. But that's what we've come into. And so for me personally, it really irks me that they think the solution to that is to ban a coyote calling test. To me, it couldn't be any further from the truth. But that's just my opinion on this. So, Tracy, let's go back here. Let me stop here for a second. A lot of the guys that are watching go, okay, so what's the answer? What do we do? Well, the resolution got passed yesterday, and it's going to be signed by Marilyn Kirkpatrick. It's going to be sent up to NDOW, and the State Wildlife Board is going to have to listen to it. So because of that, here's where you can send your comments. Send a nice email. It's Tiffany East. She's our first chairwoman in the state of Nevada. She's a phenomenal lady, and her personal email is tiffany@tiffanyEastPR.com. So you can send it to there. It'll get read into the record. She will take it, and she will hand it on out to everybody. So while you guys are sitting there with your computers or your iPhones or Androids open up, go ahead and text right now. So send an email off. Just tell her what your feelings are on whether you should think a coyote wildlife contest actually, should be banned or not. They do need to hear from that. So there we go. Okay.
So but while you're on that topic,
okay.
If you read the language of the resolution, you and I talked about this yesterday. If you read the language of the resolution, it says, and I think I can quote it, that the county commission requests that Nevada Department of the State Wildlife Commission ban all quote wildlife killing contests, close quote. Well, wildlife has a defined term in the
It
statute.
does in statute. Yes, it
In the
does.
statute, it means, among other things, it means any mammal, bird, or fish. And so the Wildlife Commission can do one of three things with this resolution. A resolution is just, think of it in terms of we're asking you nicely. Because the county commission cannot compel the Wildlife Commission to do anything. They can just ask nicely, and that's what they've done. And so the Wildlife Commission can reject it, their request. They can adopt it as it's written. I seriously doubt they would do that as broad as it is, but because it's just one sentence, it's just one phrase. Ban all wildlife killing contests, period. I really doubt you get the Wildlife Commission to do that. Or third, they could adopt some form of it. In that respect, if you're saying wildlife killing contests, that would include your bass fishing tournament.
Yeah.
That would include any sort of big buck contest.
That's $1 million tournaments coming up in April down.
Yeah.
Bassmasters and stuff.
But
Bass Pro
it
Shops
would be
put on.
presumably any contest that involves taking wildlife, and wildlife means any mammal, fish, or bird. So there you have it.
Well, Tracy, how is, in your mind, how is a coyote calling contest any different than the State Wildlife Commission voting to spend $100,000 to take coyotes out?
Well,
the end result is both you have.
At the end of the day, you have fewer coyotes. I guess what the county commission would argue is that the money that we're funding under Project 38, for example, is very specific to a specific problem. But we know from our past experience with legislation about trapping near town and no shooting zones and whatnot is the animals that we're removing are replaced by others and vice versa. And that means that let's say you draw a ring around Las Vegas and you say, we're not going to harvest any coyotes within 10 miles of Las Vegas. Well, after a while, the word in the coyote world gets out. Hey,
Yeah. They're a very social animal. Yeah, they
the word
are.
gets out, you're safe. And so that allows other coyotes to infiltrate, and the population dynamic increases in those areas where they have protection. And so the fact that I'm not saying we should go out and kill every coyote, and I found it offensive that some of the speakers yesterday at the county commission argued that these contests were just arbitrary blood sports, blah, blah, blah. And that's not the case.
No.
These folks that are involved in the coyote or predator calling contests, believe me, are diehards. They're very specific about what they do. They know how to go about it. And they're, again, in the activity of removing coyotes where there are large numbers of coyotes.
Yeah.
They don't go where there are no coyotes. They go where there are lots of them. So to that extent, you have this activity where you're reducing a large number of coyotes over a large area. And I don't know, again, we don't know how many are harvested by coyote calling contests every year because...
Or by cars.
Yeah, or by lots of other things.
Yeah.
But we only know those that are
Recorded.
harvested
Yeah.
and then reported to NDOW because the fur is sold. And obviously we would hope that that would be all of them. I would hope that all the coyotes we harvest would be able to make the beneficial use of them and use their fur.
Absolutely. And the fact that NDOW, even today in 2021, says we have a very healthy population.
Yeah.
That's not saying, hey, they're doing okay. It's very healthy. I wish the same thing could be said about our mule deer. We're at a 30-year decline on that. And I wish the amount of time and effort that is going into banning a coyote contest that I don't think, they do take a bunch out because these guys that hunt in the coyote contest also just go out calling, they varmint hunt, they predator hunt, whether there's a coyote or not. And I think that's the part that gets me is they're not saying quit hunting coyotes. They're just saying quit doing it with your friends. And last night on the news, when I saw that Dr. Seuss is being taken off, I'm just like, it's cancel culture. Where does it stop?
Culture precedes regulation.
Yeah.
So where the culture is today, that's where you'll see the regulation tomorrow. Here's the part that really scares me about what the county sent up there is it would be so easy to number one, it's bad precedent. Number two, it's bad science biology. Number three, it's out of their area of expertise, and that they're over their head. The last reason is that it not only sets a bad precedent, but it would be so easy for them to send up the next one that says,
Yeah.
ban all wildlife killing, period.
Yeah.
That would be the next one. Because again, you have people who are not connected with that resource. They're not connected with the consumptive use of wildlife. It means nothing to them. It would, what would be the difference if, so the argument from Clark County is going to be, well, we have the largest population of any county, and so it's kind of that Machiavellian, might makes right. We're the most numerous, therefore we get to push our weight around. Well, what if we went instead by landmass? Nye County is the largest county in the state.
Yeah.
So what if Nye County what if it was like the House of Representatives, where we have more representatives because of land
instead of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what if Nye County ruled the universe in Nevada, and Nye County said, well, look around out here. Everybody has a cow. So now everybody in Clark County, you have to have a cow. Everybody statewide, you have to have a cow. And we have brothels out here in Nye County. So all the other counties, you have to have brothels.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be dictated to that way. And that's exactly what the county commission is doing, is saying what's right for us 7 people here in Las Vegas who have no connection with wildlife or wildlife management, what's right for us, we dictate that's right for the entire state.
Well, they do have a connection. They have the ability to appoint who sits on the Citizens Advisory Board to manage wildlife.
That's true, but that's only an advisory
That's
position.
an advice, absolutely.
What that means is you get to tell the Wildlife Commission what your opinion is, and they're free to accept it, reject it.
Absolutely.
At their whim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I did a little bit of research before we started doing this episode right here, and everybody kind of looks at Nevada and goes, okay, well, what did California do? And so I started looking over there, and California has had municipalities that allocated money out of their municipal budget for coyote controls. It got so bad.
Yeah, that's only recent because California banned trapping. They banned large forms of hunting. And when they banned trapping and much of the predator management stuff, guess what happened? All of those predators increased in population, and they started eating game birds and rabbits and stuff like that. So there wasn't anything to hunt anymore. And so then they had to move closer to town. And guess what? They can catch cats and dogs, and they can eat those. So instead of allowing hunters pay for the opportunity to control predators, they said, okay, now we got to dip into our funds and pay someone to go out there and kill those animals and waste them.
So do you think they're calling up the guys that do the coyote calling contest and say, can you come take care of some of these? I mean, I could only hope. But in the further investigation I did in this, I did find out that there are a couple Facebook pages started in California. And don't laugh. It's called Evict Coyote. So I'm asking you guys that are here in Nevada that are watching this, just go and search Evict Coyote. And there's not one group, Tracy. There is a group in almost every municipality in Central California.
Really?
Yeah, they had them in Oceanside. They had them in all up and down the coast on that. Because they don't have the hunters that'll come hunt them. Yeah. And I think it's really going to irk me if there gets an agenda item on there that says, okay, our Clark County commissioners are going to have to spend money. We're probably sitting at a couple thousand coyotes in the valley right now. Now they're going to start taking money out of general budget and trying to do some kind of control. What's the Convention and Visitors Authority going to do when we get somebody down on the strip, out of town, gets bit by a coyote? Yeah. What kind of how much damage is that going to do to us as a tourism town? Yeah. And you look at Chicago now, and they've got so many in their city. They're around a couple thousand, but they're not hunted. So when you have something that is doesn't have an apex predator, i.e. a man, let's just look at the wild horse issue. I mean, that's really putting a hamper on Nevada because it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. Yeah. It hasn't stabilized. It keeps growing. So, Tracy, I wanted to mention some of the people that are in here and watching. We wanted to thank Kenson in. We got Mel in here. We got Ruben in here. So guys, you guys are watching us. If you've got any questions,
That's Mike.
yeah, yeah, ask Mike. Send them to us while we're live. We can address it right here on this. We can get it out so everybody can see what your question is and how we answer that. So, Tracy, we don't know when this is going to get heard up at the state up at the state wildlife board, but I can tell you that if you start putting emails in now and you thoroughly overburden them with looking at all these emails, when it gets to that point, I understand that most of them will just do a tally. How many people are for it, how many are against. They're not going to read a 2-page dissertation.
Put Tiffany's number back up there.
Yeah, let's here's Tiffany's right here. So that's Tiffany at tiffanyeastpr.com. Send her your thoughts. Let her know. I mean, we don't care if it's only 2 sentences long. She is our representative, and they want to know how can they best represent us as sportsmen. Don't be bashful, and make sure you thank her for doing what she does. This is not a paid position. She's taken time out of her career and everything else to do this, as well as the other 9 members on that board. So the makeup of that board is, of the 9 people, we have 5 that are sportsmen. We have 1 that's a rancher, 1 that's a agriculture, 1 that's a conservationist, and 1 for the general public. So Tiffany will make sure that all 8 of those also get your email. So send that off to them.
And don't think that somebody else is going to do it, because the Clark County Commission, when they met yesterday, they, from what I saw, I didn't watch it all, but they had, a half a dozen people spoke.
Yeah, and that was it.
And they all spoke in favor of it.
Yeah.
There were no coyote hunters. There were
Nope.
no coyote calling contest organizers or other people. And I'm not faulting anyone. We all have jobs and things to do in the middle of the day. But had the Clark County Commission heard from 10 or 12 or 15 sports people, what would their decision be?
Right. That's a good point. And Tracy, you being an attorney, we've talked about this in the past. It's like, well, why is it important to show up? Why is it important to send an email in? Or what happens to the guy that just sits back and doesn't do anything? You had the very best comeback on that. And I'm going to let you explain it. As if you were representing somebody and you showed up in court, I'll let you finish it.
Well, so Mike and I think we talked last week, we formed a coalition of sporting groups, and that coalition represents 8, 10, 12 organizations.
We have members on our board of directors that are presidents or board of directors of all these other organizations in Southern Nevada.
Right. And so when Mike speaks, he speaks as the president of the coalition, which represents thousands of sporting families in Southern Nevada. And Mike and I were talking about this the other day, and he said, well, that's really the purpose of the coalition. But I said, that's true. We do represent those groups. But if I'm your lawyer and we go to trial in a case, I don't get up and stand up and tell the jury, I represent Mike Reese, but he stayed home today because I represent him. He didn't think it was worth his time to come today and show you his face and show that he was actually interested in the case.
Yeah.
I would have lost the case before it ever started.
And you know what? That rings true with this instance right here.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we will show up, but we also have to have the client show up as well.
Sure.
And the client is the 55,000 big game sportsmen we have here in Nevada.
Yeah, we have this one really comes home. I was thinking about on the way over here today. There's a little bit of a precedent in Clark County about banning certain wildlife activities. You remember the commercial reptile collection?
Oh.
So that really got started with the county. Remember?
Yeah.
I don't know if I was on the cab or just at that meeting. I think I was just on the meeting.
You were at the meeting, yes.
And so a presentation was made on behalf of the county and others about the need to ban the commercial collection of reptiles in Nevada. Now you say to yourself, well, commercial reptile collection, gosh, I envision crates and trucks and trains of reptiles leaving the state. Well, it turns out there's about, seven
There's 7 people in the state, the whole entire state, and they hit about a couple mile stretch, and they basically only hunt 20 feet to the left of the road, 20 feet to the right of the road. They don't go up in the hills. They basically ride down the road, and they're so good that they can pick out the different reptiles under a bush, in a bush.
Whether that reptile is a female and was
Yeah.
carrying eggs.
The data that they had was unbelievable.
And it only came from them.
Yes.
That was part of the problem. And let me finish the story. So the county came and made this petition, and I want to add one little footnote is, one thing that I remember this gal from the county talking about was, we're fearful that tourists would come here and not see the type of reptiles they expect. For example, down in El Dorado Valley, people would go down there and not see whatever reptiles they think they're going to see. And so, again, the talking continued, and eventually it made its way to the Wildlife Commission. Wildlife Commission decided, because really there were only these 7 gentlemen
people,
who
yeah.
showed up,
Yeah.
because they're the only ones with the dog in the fight, really.
Yeah.
And despite them showing that all this data came from, I mean, they had boxes and boxes of data about what reptiles do and how they reproduce and what populations they saw. I mean, the herpetologist from Endow, I thought looked like I don't mean to say it that way. I think he didn't have the data they had.
Right.
In fact, he was very clear that the data he got was from them.
Yeah.
Other than some observations he'd made and that sort of thing. But so it happened. The Wildlife Commission banned the commercial collection of reptiles in the state of Nevada. Now you're sitting at home saying, so? Well, to those gentlemen, that was their passion. If your passion is golf or baseball or hockey or something else, and someone bans you from participating in that activity, it really galls you.
Yeah.
You feel offended, you feel violated.
Yeah.
And I just felt so sorry for those guys when I watched them leave that meeting, thinking that's what they love to do. That's their golf.
That was
that's
their life.
Hockey. That's what they talked about. That's what they did on their spare time. And here it's all taken away. So now I come back to this comment about, and I remember El Dorado Valley was specifically mentioned as an area we have to protect so that reptiles can live there. Well, guess what's down in El Dorado Valley now? Miles and miles of solar panels.
Yeah.
There couldn't be a lizard exist down there.
Yeah. It's just it's mind-boggling. So guys, consider this a wake-up call. I'm gonna put this up again. I mean, this is our only way of protecting what we have. Maybe you're not a coyote caller. Maybe you're just a bass fisherman. But we as sportsmen are all in this industry together, and we need to back each other up wholeheartedly. So send your email to Tiffany, and I'd like to see if you guys did it. Just go on our Facebook page and under this video right here, just say done, and we'll know that you did it. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about is our Facebook page. So Tracy understands this, but we go to the legislature. We walk the halls. We meet with senators, assembly people, and stuff. The fact that I am an administrator on a page gives me some privileges that the average person doesn't have, which is unfortunate. Because when we started talking to them about coyote ban last time, potentially trapping ban for the statewide, they're looking like, well, how big of an issue is this? Well, I take my phone out, and because I'm administrator, we had one post in there about telling you guys, to send your emails in and stuff. I had 40,000 hits on it. Unfortunately, as somebody's looking at the page, there was like 12 likes and like 4 comments. But yet, I equate that to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. The Las Vegas Review-Journal knows how many newspapers they printed, but they don't know how many people read it.
Or thought it was worthwhile enough to share with maybe their neighbor.
Or,
their friend,
yeah, they
or
have no data from that. The reason I'm bringing this up, if you guys go on anybody's page and you read an article, just do one of 2 things, or both. Click like to be counted, or put a comment in. That records what is the interest level throughout the state for this particular post, especially on the Coalition's Facebook page, where we look out and say, okay, guys, how big of an issue is this to you? How big of an issue is it if we ban coyote calling contests? I use the analogy, there's 7 states in the United States that it's illegal to hunt or fish on a Sunday. Now, they're nowhere close to Nevada, But what would happen to us if in through our legislature they figured out they had enough precedent set that they could ban it on a Sunday? Now what do? It's because somebody didn't feel a need to send in an email, didn't feel a need to make a phone call, didn't feel a need to sit down in a chair at a wildlife meeting, and they would come and maybe the non-consumptive user would beat them there and there wouldn't be enough chairs, so they'd have to stand. Guys, that table is for sportsmen. We should be sitting at that table, each and every one of us, especially if you have kids involved in this. This is our job to make sure that this gets prolonged to where they have the same opportunities that we did. So, Tracy, I know that you need to get, I've got a couple other items I'm going to add to these guys, but I truly want to thank you for coming in. You're a wealth of knowledge. You're a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah, whatever.
When it comes to predators. I know.
Old and out of date. That's what encyclopedias are. Because we have the internet.
Exactly. And, and a lot of people do, read that internet and stuff. But guys, keep on watching. We're going to do weekly shows on this. Let us know some of the topics that you'd like to see us cover. We are open to anything, everything. We don't care if it's bass fishing. This is a sportsman's world, and we tend to try to take on the political issues because we're not the guys that are going to put water on the mountain. We're not the guys. We're not the group that's going to restore the habitation. However, members of our group will be the first ones out there to do some of that stuff. But we need to have a voice in the political arena, and it is so easy for you guys now because you don't have to pull out the typewriter. You don't have to make out a big long letter. You don't have to lick a stamp and send it off. Then you don't have to go get a Xerox copy to do it because you got to do it to 5 others. It is so easy and so simple right now. It's a travesty if we are not sending in emails. It really is.
Yeah, a person, in my view, a person ought to leave tracks. You mentioned your kids, and that's what I look at. I have several sons who love to hunt and fish and trap, and I just feel I would be remiss if I sat here and didn't do something to preserve that for them and for their kids. I feel like I need to leave tracks for them to follow, and this is my way of doing it. Other people build guzzlers and collect sagebrush seeds. Those are all really good things. This is what I feel I can do to contribute, and that is to public awareness. Help sportsmen and women understand what issues impact them today and which ones we're going to impact them tomorrow.
Right.
Preserve our culture.
Yeah. And the other thing is, Tracy, is I kind of want to brag about this. There's no fee that changes hands for this coalition.
Yeah.
We will stand up in front of you guys. All we are asking for is some support from the sportsmen. We're not asking for any dollars. We're not asking for anything. All we are asking you to do is help us prolong this heritage for your kids and your grandkids. So, Tracy, thank you. I appreciate it. You're a wealth of knowledge. And you're welcome back anytime. You could even become the host instead of the co-host if you want.
I'm telling you, I'm tapped out. Whatever information I had between my ears, it's long been tapped out. But I appreciate all that you do, Mike, and for the effort you make to do this on your own dime, at your own expense, and to help the rest of us and be kind of a laboring oar. So I hope that the sporting men and women in Nevada appreciate that as well.
Well, I thank you. And the rumor going around is you have a fishing boat now.
I do have
So are you going to be getting in some of these bass tournaments? Because it sounds like you might have to get in there in a hurry before they get banned.
Yeah. Well, they would be banned if the Wildlife Commission adopts this resolution. No, there's some really great bass. The Rainers are great bass fishermen. They hit the contest really hard. I know. We're just really blessed in Southern Nevada to have lots of resources. Lake Mojave, Lake Mead. The Lincoln County lakes are just within an hour or two. You can hook the boat on, run out there. I try and get out there early in the morning before it gets hot in the summer and back to work before anybody misses me. And it's just a great way to enjoy the outdoors. I take my little grandsons out there and they just have a great time. I let them steer the boat. They think they're in a. That's
where the memories are created.
Yeah.
And it'd be I'm the president of Las Vegas Woods and Waters, and our motto is all we do is fish and hunt and talk about it. So as I've been around this group for almost 20 years now, I said, guys, wouldn't it be sad if we sat around to talk about it and somebody came back and says, well, I went to my favorite quail hunting spot the other day, and you're not going to believe this. There was two ballards put up in the middle of the road and a chain going across. And I go, and how did that happen? Who did that? When did they do that? That was the driving force of us starting this coalition. Yeah. So, guys, don't let the bollards get put in the road and the chain going across, because we'll all be locked out.
Culture precedes regulation.
It does.
You let the culture change, eventually the regulation will happen.
So true, so true. Tracy, thank you.
Okay.
Have
Thanks,
a good
Mike.
night, and
All
we
right.
appreciate it. And we'll hope you'll come and join us back.
Come along.
So, guys, I'd like to answer some questions if anybody's got any. I've got some other information down here that I think is pertinent to the discussion that's going on right now. I don't know when it's going to be held, but the main message is the science has got to prevail. And the emotion, once the emotion peeks its head in here, it's kind of hard for us to beat that. And you know, they use the slanderous words to talk what we do. I hold my head high because I know in my world it's no different than me opening up the door and let the pest control guy come on in and kill off all the insects. I don't know how many black widows he killed. I don't know how many brown recluses. I don't know how many cockroaches. But I guarantee you, I won't eat any of those. So I know that one of the big arguments is, well, you know what, if you eat the coyotes, then it probably wouldn't be half as bad. Listen, a coyote is a predator. It's an unprotected species. And you know what else is an unprotected species? Pigeons. But you look at some of our biggest disease-carrying animals out on the landscape, some of the biggest ones we have are your foxes, are your coyotes, you know, even are your pigeons and stuff. But we have to fight. I don't know how much clearer to say that. Fighting can be going to banquets. Buy $20 worth of extra raffle tickets. That money that gets generated in those, guys, goes all the way back in. We as sportsmen fund 97% of NDOW's budget, roughly, approximately. Okay? There's no general money in here. So here's the other thing. When and if NDOW gets called out because it's a life-threatening or imminent danger with a coyote in here, wildlife personnel are tasked with that. Now, that doesn't mean they're the ones that take care of it. They may have to sub it out to somebody else. My point is the general public is benefiting from us sportsmen and our dollars going towards NDOW. There should be a bill introduced where the local communities start coughing up some of the money. And people's minds, like Tracy talked earlier, that culture might change when you start having to do it out of their pocket. But right now, sportsmen, the latest detail that I have showed in 2011, it didn't come out until 2013, but the sportsmen in the state of Nevada at cash registers in Nevada spent $409 million at the cash registers. You say, okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean to John Q. Public? What does that mean to a soccer mom? What that means is you as a sportsman generated over $38 million in sales tax that they get to benefit from. Any of you guys get a Christmas card? A thank you? No. That's why we make sure that everybody that we talk with understands the value of having sportsmen in the community. So the sportsman's world is growing. I talked a couple episodes ago about our 11 to 15 age group kids putting in for deer tags. It is as big as a 60 and above list. So right now, we've got more people coming in. Right now, the trend could change, but for right now, we've got more coming in than we do have going out. That's a good thing. It's unfortunate that we only have a limited amount of game in Nevada. We had down here in southern Nevada, we had over 200 days last year of no rain. That's through no fault of NDOW. This is going to be some bleak times. We get it. We understand it. But again, we still need to do every single thing that we can. We as sportsmen are the gatekeepers to make sure that we are managing by science. And don't be afraid to ask NDOW, where's the science? I remember a lady way back, I'm dating myself, going through a drive-thru and going, where's the beef? You guys all remember that commercial? Well, I think that our mantra should be, where's the science to this? We should be dictated by science when making a decision. The emotion shouldn't come into that. If you're going to put the emotion in, then let's start taking a tally of how many people have lost their dogs here in Las Vegas. It's a ton. I know that there was HOAs here in Vegas now that are trying to get bids to manage the coyotes. Some of the people don't mind them. Some people are fearful. Some people are widows. And the only thing they have left is their pet. You want to get on emotion, you take, my neighbor happens to be 95 years old. I can guarantee you she loses her dog. She lost her world at the hands of a coyote. The solution is not to quit banning coyotes. So, guys, we are going to put on another show next Tuesday. I'm going to have on an actual coyote hunter. He's actually a very good sportsman. He puts in for the tags. He comes on out. And I've got 2 requests for people that are watching. If there's anybody out there that understands how to produce and do some of these kind of live streams and stuff, and you're in Las Vegas, we are looking for help doing this stuff. Right now, I'm a one-man show, but I do have a lot of guys in the background helping out, getting this thing set up. And this has been a year in the works of getting this out on the air. So I want to thank those guys. But if one of you guys want to come on in and be a guest, this is open to anybody. We've got a lot of great sportsmen here in Las Vegas that had a wealth of knowledge. Send me an email, send me a text, do me an instant messenger on here and let us know that you are interested and let us know what you do. We'd like to hear from some of the archery people. We'd like to know some of the black powder stuff, the big game hunters, the upland game. Last weekend I just went out to the retriever clubs. They had their trials out there. It was phenomenal. I think it was 300. It was over 300 dogs entered. They had trainers coming all the way down from all the way down from Alaska to come on into this. We had some of our neighboring states. The point is, these episodes are for you, the sportsman. I'm asking you guys to get involved in this. So just thought you'd want to know, and we'll keep this show going. Thank you guys, and have a great evening.